It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
Hey, it's the Real Estate Breakfast, back again for another weekend, breaking down the Australian property market and also the bigger picture stuff with this global shock that is still playing out. And good luck if you are off to the races chasing property across Australia this weekend. Got another busy Saturday morning property show coming up. Understanding the Australian property market starts right here. It is a Saturday. It is the 1st of August, September next month. And as you know, we like to keep track for Aussies who are looking at moving to the UAE and investing there, as well as investors, because there's a lot of Aussie investors that have got portfolios. So this morning we are in part going to have a look at the mortgage space in the Dubai property market. And if you are an Aussie business looking at moving and relocating your business into the UAE, what is happening in the commercial space? Because that can be a complete nightmare, especially if the market is tight. So we'll find out about that. Mario Volpe, he's going to be joining us. And also Connor Humble, who is a director and the head of the mortgage division there in Dubai for a company called SPF. So welcome, Connor, to the Real Estate Breakfast. As I say, Aussies here will be very interested to know if the Dubai mortgage industry has held its ground given what is going on there at the moment.
Yeah, morning, Craig. Thanks for having me on this morning. Yeah, look, for sure, the mortgage market, it's been able to pivot with the sort of changing landscape, you could say, that's sort of been caused by the conflict. The actual banks that are within the market, you know, they're still very competitive. They're still offering rates sub 4%. But what we did see a big change in, because we saw the purchase market slow somewhat, was the banks offering what we call buyout products that were sort of very attractive to a lot of homeowners in Dubai, not just Dubai, the UAE. So we were seeing, you know, what we call in Europe or the UK, like refinance, remortgages, they call a buyout here. And we saw rates and product offerings from the banks we'd not seen in the past. So there was still a lot of mortgage transactions happening, even though the purchase market did take a bit of a slowdown.
What about the mortgage market, comparing it at the moment compared to the UK and Europe? How does it sort of balance out between these different markets?
Yeah, the word you used there, Craig, different markets, is so important to mention. Key things being that rate-wise, we're seeing, again, you know, the UAE rates sub 4%, with rates in Europe and the UK currently priced higher than those rates. However, there are some massive differences between the two markets, just where the UAE mortgage market is relatively young compared to Europe and the UK. Things like interest-only mortgages, few and far between currently in the UAE. Terms, so maximum loan terms, we see maximum loan terms in Europe and the UK at 40 years, whereas here we're seeing 25 years as a capped maximum up to the age of 65 or 70, relevant to the bank's offerings. As far as sort of the key differences, that's sort of really where we are. We're seeing interest rates here at sub 4%. We're seeing rates in the UK sort of, I would say, higher than 4.5%, sometimes 5%, with some banks with the bank regulations coming in there to sort of, we're seeing an increase in the base rate. Here we've seen a slowdown. I wouldn't say, you know, we're not seeing a massive increase in the central bank's rates. You know, it's pegged to the dollar. So with the conflict, we have seen a slowdown as far as what we were hoping was going to happen over the year was the US Fed reserve rates come down, which in turn affects this market and the rates that are offered. It's not quite got to where we projected at the start of the year before this had all happened, but we're certainly seeing the banks still offering very competitive rates, and the market's definitely moving again. Maybe not pre-conflict levels, but certainly a level that you'd consider fairly normal in the summer months.
All right. So it is holding its ground and very, very competitive. Let me come to you, Mario, because that's pretty interesting what Connor is saying there. Very, very competitive mortgage rates in the UAE when you start lining them up against the UK and Europe.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as he says, the dirham here is pegged to the dollar. So whatever America does with the rates, the UAE central bank always follows suit very, very quickly. Mortgage market, very competitive. There are, I'm going to say, countless mortgage companies, mortgage brokers who are competing not just with themselves, but obviously with the banks directly. I'm a big advocate for using mortgage brokers because clearly they will deal with all the banks. Most of the time, I'll say to my clients, go and speak to your bank and see whatever they offer you, but then see if a mortgage broker can actually beat it. And invariably, they often do because the bank can only sell its own products, whereas a mortgage broker can actually pick and choose, do a fact find on the client and see what's best for them.
Let's turn our attention to commercial right now. We'll come back to you in just a moment there, Connor, because while residential property tends to dominate the headlines, the commercial market often tells us where business confidence is really heading. And if you are an employer, what are you thinking about right now? You know, are you changing your plans, or is the Dubai office market continuing to surprise us? What are your thoughts around that, Mario?
Well, I think that on the commercial side, I wouldn't call it a slowdown. Rents have obviously been going up in the commercial space, but now things are starting to sort of balance themselves out. But what's happening is that companies are simply taking a little longer to make decisions, just like the residential buyers, basically. I mean, earlier this year, with all the sort of geopolitical uncertainty in the region, many businesses decided perhaps to renew their existing leases rather than commit to sort of major relocations. That's very different from sort of demand disappearing. And it's interesting to see where the activity is actually coming from, because 2/3 of all office lease transactions in the second quarter were actually spaces for under 500 square feet. Now, this shows me that Dubai is still attracting entrepreneurs, the startups, and the smaller businesses wanting to set up here.
Yes, because at the top end of the market, if you take a look at grade A office space, that really does remain very much sought after, and to the point that even some of the newest buildings have been largely pre-leased before they've even been finished.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's a real clear sign that these multinational companies and financial firms, they still want the very best space, and there simply isn't enough of it to go round. But I think the headline here is that office rents have finally stopped rising after almost 5 years of continuous growth. They've stabilised rather than fallen, obviously, which is actually a sign of a healthier, more sustainable market. And with new supply handing over in the next few years, already attracting strong interest, I think Dubai's office sector is entering its next phase rather than losing any particular momentum.
All right, well, let's come back to you, Connor, because I want to ask you this question. It's something that we always talk about, and that is use a mortgage broker if you are looking at buying into the UAE property market. It's astonishing how many people try and do this by themselves, and they end up in all sorts of a knot, and then come to the realization of, oh yeah, maybe I should have used a mortgage broker.
This is something that get asked all of the time, not only by people that I speak to within the industry, but also the clients. You know, why should we be using a mortgage broker and not going to the bank directly? And look, you've hit the nail on the head there. You know, we have it so many times where people end up in very difficult situations, because when people are signing into a contract from day one, you know, you need to have the confidence that you're able to adhere to the contracts and not only purchase the property and complete, but also the time frames are so important. And what a lot of people don't know is, you know, one bank might offer you a certain affordability rate, whereas, you know, the bank that's slightly more expensive could give you an extra 500,000 dirhams, you know, depending on the situation, just for, you know, giving you an example of some numbers there. So look, using a mortgage broker in the UAE is vital if you really want to understand the options that you have available and have a product and a mortgage that actually suits your needs, rather than just going to your bank, them telling you what they can offer, you know, you just assuming that's all that's available. So we're completely free to speak to. We are available to speak outside of banking hours, which is always good for people that are in the real estate sector, that have clients they're taking out on viewings, especially through the summer in the evening. If they can get out and do viewings outside of the midday sun, you know, speaking to a broker, it doesn't cost you a penny. And if anything, it will save you money, time and stress in the long run.
Yeah, I think the problem here, Connor, is that people just have this assumption, these are people coming from outside of the UAE, that it's going to be the same as their country, and they couldn't be more wrong if they planned it. It's completely different. There are a set of rules and regulations that are new regulations that you won't find in your country. I don't know why this is such a thing where people think it's going to be the same. And that's an issue that you have seen probably time and time again when you've said, no, hang on, it's completely different here.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially for, like I say, we deal with a lot of clients from Hong Kong, Singapore, but we've got our head office in the UK, 28 years. That office has been there, 300 plus staff. So from us, obviously, the easiest one to compare to is the UK, because we do deal with a lot of UK clients, either sort of moving here or buying here as non-residents. And there's so much involved where it's system generated, it's online in the UK, where, you can punch some numbers in, it can give you an idea of what the borrowing capabilities are. Here, it's completely different. It's very manual. It's not one size fits all. And with a slight piece of advice, a recommendation, and understanding the client's position, we can take you from buying the property that will do you for 5 years to potentially buying a dream home that you could be in forever. And that conversation takes 10 minutes for us to understand what we can do with your financial situation. So you're exactly right. People that are moving to the country tend to expect that it's going to be the same process. It's simple and we can just do it all online, but they get quite a shock when they start to do that themselves when they get here.
So there you go, some very good advice from Connor. Now, we've heard for months that buyers were taking this wait-and-see approach, watching headlines and hoping for better opportunities, but markets don't stand still forever. Are you getting then the sense, Mario, that people are finally ready to stop waiting and start making decisions again? I think I know the answer.
Well, Craig, buyers never actually went away. They never really lost that desire to purchase, because around 2/3 of people actively searching for property have consistently said that they intend to buy within the next 6 months. Now, that number has barely moved all year, but what has changed is their expectation of where prices are heading. Because when the regional conflict flared up, many people thought that prices would fall quite sharply. But as time has gone on, those expectations have definitely waned.
Well, I'm not so sure. When you say that people never really lost the desire to purchase, I would disagree with that. I would say that there have been many people that have decided, no, this is not the time to purchase. There has been a softening around that, but whilst there are still deals to be done, especially in the secondary market, many buyers are now, I'll grant you this, accepting that the big reductions that they were waiting for just simply haven't happened.
Yeah, and that's right. I mean, the market itself reflects that, because overall prices have remained relatively stable over the past couple of months. So buyers are beginning to recognise that there is actually a floor under the market. And instead of waiting for that bargain that may never come, many are deciding it's better to secure the right property while they still have a choice. From my conversations with clients, I can see that their uncertainty hasn't completely disappeared, obviously, but people are becoming much more pragmatic. And that's usually when transactions start to gain that momentum again, because confidence returns gradually rather than all at once.
All right, good stuff, fellas. We'll wrap it up there on our Saturday morning property show, focusing on the Dubai real estate market that so many Aussies are actively involved in. Connor, thank you so much for coming on and giving us that breakdown, especially around the mortgage piece.
Thank you, mate. I really appreciate your time, and thank you for allowing me to come on and have a chat with you.
And Mario, you too, have yourself a fantastic weekend. No footy to watch, so it's going to be a little bit of a quiet one for you.
I was about to say the same thing, Craig. Yeah, happy weekend to everyone, and just relax because the Premier League is coming in 3 weeks.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.